Hello, welcome to the Sunday Chat. I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer. This is my chance to have a chinwag with you about all things Bald Explorer. Happy New Year. It's the 2nd of December 2022. I'm recording this on New Year's Day, as I usually do on my Sunday Chat. And as ever, I've got a scrap of paper with some suggestions on the sort of things I want to talk to you about. Today I'm sitting at my edit suite. But I have actually been out today, as I say, on New Year's Day, that I recorded this with one of my viewers, Tim Tricker, who very kindly took me out to lunch. Tim, if you're watching, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. We had a good old chinwag about all sorts of bits and bobs and plans for the new year and things for the Bald Explorer and so on and so forth. And in many ways, that's what I want to talk to you about. It's a new year, and so there's a whole load of things that is potentially in front of us. First of all, it's great to feel that actually we're coming out of the pandemic. The last couple of years have been pretty much non-entities, taxing, having to be creative and inventive and doing different things. And I've spent a bit of time, I suppose, because of the various lockdowns or not wanting to go out into the greater community, inside. And I've actually found that people have been fascinated and interested in my domestic life and the videos that I have produced about that. And actually, I think that's an area that I want to explore more going into this year. So, as you saw in my previous video, I'm giving up bread, and it's only been 24 hours since I've done that, so no toast for me this morning and no bread sandwiches, and all of that seems to be okay. And it was interesting going to lunch actually and being asked if I had any allergies when we got to the restaurant in Lewes in East Sussex. And I said, well, not really, not allergies. I'm not allergic to anything, but I'm giving up wheat. I'm not having bread. And they said, oh, we've got a gluten-free menu. And I thought, oh, okay, let's have a look at that. So I actually had a lovely chili con carne, which was gluten-free. So there we go. I've managed to avoid wheat so far all day. And I guess, you know, wheat is in a lot of things. So I'm going to be looking at health and food. And as I explained in the previous video that I was saying, I was trying to get rid of wheat from my diet. I'm not going on any specific keto or paleo diet. I'm doing it my own way and my own thoughts on this, and I'm exploring it, and so I'm not going to be super fastidious over it all. I may be lax in a little area, but I am going to try and keep off the bread for a month, and I'll report on how that goes and how I'm feeling. So we'll see how it goes. I'm also interested in lots of other areas. I think once you sort of look at things for health reasons or for dietary reasons or for longevity, you start looking at different areas. And my principal reason is because I want to look back at the traditional ways of doing things, the traditional foods we have. So very possibly I should be looking at some of those old-fashioned foods like a Lancashire hot pot and shepherd's pie and things like that. So I know there'll be some people who go, oh wait, potatoes, they're high in carbohydrates, you're not supposed to eat those if you're on a keto diet. Well, I'm not on one of these diets, I'm on my own diet. So I just wanted to stress that and get that out of the way, because I know a lot of people sort of get a little bit nervous, and I'm not encouraging anybody else to follow what I'm doing. This is purely what I'm doing. So going along that whole business about the traditional crafts or traditional foods and extending it to the old ways of doing things. I'm convinced that in the modern world we're too quick to throw away the baby with the bathwater, and that some of the old-fashioned ways of doing things not only may have been slower and perhaps a bit more tedious than the ways that we do things. But I think there was also a lot of satisfaction. So I made a coffee table last month, and you may have seen that video. And if not, I'd recommend checking it out if you want. Now, I am no woodman, no craftsman, no carpenter, but I enjoyed the process of putting it together. And I think over the next few years, I would like to learn more carpentry skills so that I can actually build more of my own furniture rather than relying on just buying something mass produced. It would be more personal to me, even if that is a question of starting right at the beginning and slowly building up those skills. I have this rather perhaps silly idea, but it may come to fruition, that in my house, which is a Victorian house, wouldn't it be lovely to go back, you might not think so, but I do, to go back to the old sash cord windows. Could I make them myself? I know people will be going, don't be silly, you'd need to know a lot about it. There's no rush. There is no rush for this. I know I'd have to understand certain types of joints, dovetailing things together so they work, and getting things right, and using all sorts of old-fashioned tools. But maybe rather than leaping down the UPVC double glazed windows way, I might put back into my house, even if it's only on one window temporarily, to try doing that. There's a lot of things in my house that need replacing, and it could be that my house becomes a set for trying to understand some of these old-fashioned crafts and techniques. The jumper I'm wearing at the moment was knitted by one of my viewers, Mary Hammond, who tells me that she knitted for Harrods at one time. So she knows her stuff, and I've asked her, would she teach me how to knit? Wouldn't that be great? I'd love to have a go. Even if I'm not going to master it and even be able to knit a jumper, I might be able to knit a jumper. It may not be perfect, but the satisfaction and the knowledge and the pleasure in experiencing some of these older things than just going into a shop and buying something off the peg. It may not be very good to look at, I appreciate that, but just the appreciation of the task. I mean, it's like editing. I used to edit on film. I edited negatives on a PicSync and put all the different tracks of sound together. It makes my appreciation of editing in a digital fashion so much bigger, because I now know the old-fashioned way, which is basically what the editing of today is emulating. It's no longer on bits of celluloid that you look up into the light or put into an editor or a PicSync or a whatever and splice it together with acetone or tape or all those sort of things. And it's given me a huge understanding about editing and timing and fades and dissolves and things, because I did it the old-fashioned way. And I really think that I want to spend time looking at that and take you with me. Now, you may not want to explore any of that, and I completely understand, but we'll see. As far as the food goes, also, I'm not, as I've mentioned in the previous video, I'm not so keen on the modern produced food. I want to try and find, where possible, some of the grass-fed cows, that if I'm going to eat beef, I want the animals to have been fed how they would have been fed either in the wild or in early farming, grass-fed, because it's in the grass that all the goodness is. Of course, you may argue it depends what the grass is these days, because a lot of grass-fed cows, I think, are being fed on one monocrop of grass and not on those ancient meadows, which had all sorts of different types of flowers, wildflowers and wild grasses, which would have had an array of different minerals and vitamins, all the nutrients that we would need. And if they're just being fed on a monocrop of ryegrass or something like that, Italian ryegrass, then it may be defeating the object. But if it's not grain fed, then that's got to be one step up. But it's difficult, and I'm going to try and explore all of this. It may be impossible. It may be that ultimately I need to find my own little piece of land, put my own cow on it, and milk that, for example. I don't know. This may seem all too much pie in the sky, but it's worth exploring, and that's what I want to do. So coming up in 2022, let's assume the pandemic is pretty much sort of disappearing over the next few months, and that we all get our lives back. We become more positive about things. We're embracing the world again with vim and vigour, and I hope we all do. Well, I want to take my van, which I'm slowly, as you can have seen, decking it out, and go further afield and stay over various places and visit some farms and farm shops and experience some of the foods that farmers are actually growing. I did a little bit of that in previous years, 2 years ago when I was out before COVID and everything stopped. But I'm determined to promote the small farms, the healthy way of living, and all of that, and the old traditional ways. And if I can go and explore some of that and sample some food and cook some food up out at campsites that I might manage to stay in, or at the roadside, or in discreet places, and bring those in, I think that's one of the areas that I want to bring back to the channel and do much more of. I was given very generously, and thank you very much, you know who you are, a tent, a big tent actually, with the idea that Julia and Joe and I could, instead of going out on our narrow boat, because let's face it, everybody does narrow boats these days. In fact, if you buy a narrow boat, it seems that it's obligatory to have a YouTube channel to go with it. So instead of that, this year I think that we will go and do an exploration of camping, albeit with a big tent, and again try out some different foods, explore the local area, and try and find some different crafts and all of that. I mean, if I've learnt my knitting, it would be lovely to sit there with my little steamer going in a campsite, knitting something for the winter, and all of that. I can picture it now. It might be a bit silly, it might be a bit funny. I hope it is amusing and especially entertaining, because that's really why I'm making the videos, to try and entertain. I'm educating myself, and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and maybe you'll find that entertaining too. I want to thank Julia from Imp of Bee, who gave me a bobble hat, or a woolly hat, a few weeks ago. Thank you very much for that. Arrived has one that she's made for the lovely Julia. So as we get into these colder months, we've had a very mild winter so far, but I'm sure that the cold is coming, frost and possibly snow, who knows. But hopefully lovely, bright, sunny days, albeit with a very frosty, cold, rigid surface to walk on, so it's not too muddy and boggy, all frozen up. You might see the lovely Julia and I out for a walk with our bobble hats on. So thank you so much, Julia. That does keep the old bonce nice and warm, which is great. And one of the other projects that I've got coming up is I want to build an outhouse just next to my kitchen, so that next winter, when it's cold, I will have a little hub area in the kitchen with my interesting food, the herbs that maybe I have grown, which would be a project coming up when I've sorted out the shed of growing a few herbs, a little sofa, moving the sink out into the outhouse, the white goods, the washing machine and the fridge, possibly building a larder in the old-fashioned way where you had a larder in the outhouse, so that the kitchen and the essie and my French dresser becomes a little sort of social area where I can sit and make some herb teas, have some grass-fed beef on the essie, my steamer going, and have a really sort of interesting old-fashioned type kitchen, and maybe sitting there darning socks or whatever. It's I'm painting this sort of old-fashioned romantic view. It may not actually translate to that in the end. It may be frustration, and in the end I may nip out to the nearest supermarket and buy stuff ready-made. I'm hoping not to do that. I'm hoping that I can try and embrace, or at least understand, some of those old-fashioned ways of doing things. And that's really what all of this is for, as I explore the heritage of our country, England, and Englishness, as well as the landscape heritage and nature, all within that. And I hope that you'll be coming with me on this journey. I may not have explained this terribly well. It may not have been the most articulate expression of the things that I'm aiming to do, but I hope you sort of get the idea. I'm very keen. I don't want to shun the modern world. I'm using the modern tools to record it. It's just that business about, I think it's very easy to think that we mustn't look back at all. I think there are some good things of the past that perhaps we're running away from too quickly, and there might be some things that bring inner peace and joy to all our lives. So that's really what it's about. Anyway, thank you so much for all your support in the previous year. I'm hoping that you'll follow, like, subscribe if you haven't, and maybe become a patron as we go into this new year with excitement and adventure. Thank you so much for watching. I better go and edit this and get it up so you've got it to watch. Take care and look after yourself, and yes, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Right, come on then.